So some sad news, unfortunately. Not long after filming this review, the camera stopped working. So while it appears functional from the outside, it's pretty much dead inside, and I certainly know how that feels. But I just wanted to put this out there just before we get into the review, that I still stand by everything I say in it, but unfortunately the camera's stopped working, and this is always a problem with older cameras. It's a little bit of buyer beware. So I just wanted to let you know that these things do happen. You buy old cameras, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And sometimes the cost of repair is going to be more than it is just to go out and buy a new one and replace it. But I still stand by everything I say in the review, so let's get into it.
Hello and welcome to another video. This time we're going to be taking a look at the Fuji X10. I love this little camera. I think it's a brilliant little camera, and I think if you're in the market for something like a Fuji X100V or X100VI and can't afford that and you're looking for a budget alternative, this might just be the camera for you. Let's take a look at it. So just a quick YouTube disclaimer, obviously people ask why I don't make more YouTube videos. This is the reason, sorry. Typical YouTube disclaimer, I've paid for this camera with my own money. This isn't in collaboration with Fuji or anybody else. I'm making the video because I love the camera and I want to share more about the camera with all of you guys that are interested in these things. If you do want to support the channel, please consider a like and a subscribe if you like the content. Never thought I'd say this either, but I'm just about to launch a Lightroom preset pack, and I'll leave more details of that in the description below. So if that is something that interests you, feel free to take a look at that, and any support for the channel I really appreciate. Thank you for that. So it was first released in 2011, and at the time it was Fuji's premium compact camera. There's a lot of similar cameras on the market around the same time, but this was quite well spec'd for what it was, and also featured a lot of manual settings and things, so really appealed to photographers that knew what they were doing with the camera but didn't want to carry bulkier cameras around with them on a day-to-day basis. However, it was perfectly accessible for those who just looking to use a compact camera. It has all the auto settings that you'd expect of a camera of the time, and was ideal for things like street photography or people that just wanted a camera that they could carry with them on a daily basis. So taking a look at the build quality, one of the first things that you'll notice is the premium materials that have been used by it. It feels metallic, feels good in the hand. The only thing that I would say is obviously you have to bear in mind it's a compact camera, so it is slightly smaller, so if you have larger hands like I do, it can feel a little bit awkward at time, but the actual build quality is excellent on it. It feels very durable, feels very robust, and apart from the fact that I like to keep my cameras in good condition, I obviously don't intentionally want to scratch them or dent them, I do feel like it could take a drop and hopefully, fingers crossed, survive. So in terms of the design characteristics, it is an actual rangefinder camera, so we do have the eyepiece for viewing, and you can actually use it. I don't always recommend that. It's not the greatest way of using it, but I'll come back to that later in the video. It's a beautiful camera to look at. It's perfectly well designed. I think this would stand the test of time for many, many years to come and will still look great down the line. One of the real killer features in terms of a design aspect, and people love this, is that to actually turn the camera on, you rotate the lens and that turns the camera on. And obviously to turn it back off again, just rotate it the other way, closes the lens down, turns the camera off. I love that feature, kind of wish that was a thing on more modern cameras as well, but brilliant little feature. Makes the camera super quick to use, super accessible, and it just looks brilliant in the hand as well. So great points for design and build quality. So I've got a Pro Mist on the front, and in terms of adding a filter, that's where one of the downsides does come in. It takes a slightly strange size. I think it's 40.5mm for the filter thread on the front of the lens, which is a little bit difficult to get hold of. I was told that you can use slightly off sizes, so I think it was something like a 39.5 or a 40mm filter thread. Yeah, this is a 40mm filter thread, and it does appear to work, although obviously I'd always recommend going with what the manufacturer tells you should do, and I think it is a 40.5mm thread, so it's slightly weird sizing, and obviously that steps up onto a 50mm thread, just so I can add the 52mm thread, just so I can add the Pro Mist filter. So one of the other main features with this camera, and one of the things that people tend to love about it, is the quality of the lens on it. The lens is brilliant for what is a compact camera. Now, it is a zoom, so you do have a little bit of reach with it, and it's roughly equivalent from 28mm to 112mm, and it goes from f2 to f2.8 on the actual lens. And I would say that this is one of my favorite features about it, the way that the sharpness and the quality of the lens for a compact camera is excellent. Like, I don't think I've ever used a small compact camera like this with a better lens than this. And I love the way that it kind of renders those shots as well. So absolutely no complaints about the lens. And I know what some people will be saying, if you like the lens so much, why have you put a Pro Mist in front of it? Well, that's just the way that I like to shoot. I like to soften it and remove some of that digital aspect of the images. So, but brilliant lens, no complaints in that department. So one of the other main features with this camera is actually the sensor itself. Now, that might sound slightly strange talking about a sensor from 2011, when obviously there are literally hundreds of better sensors these days that you can get in cameras, but the quality of what it is for a compact camera from 2011 is excellent. I love the sensor on this camera. So it's a 2/3 sensor, so it's the EXR CMOS sensor, and that performs brilliantly in most ordinary daytime situations. Where it starts to fall down, being a 2/3 sensor and slightly smaller, is when you go into kind of lower light conditions and things. That's not going to be where you get the best from this camera, although we'll show some examples. You can use this camera at night and still get some really good images, but obviously that's not really where the kind of high quality points of this sensor are going to be. But in daytime conditions, and in particular in sunny conditions, this sensor renders really well. I do tend to shoot in RAW with the camera, and actually find that the dynamic range is pretty decent on this camera, and the RAW files are excellent. Again, they're great to work with. You can pull a lot of details out of the shadow. As long as you're controlling your highlights as well, then you'll be able to get a decent image with the RAW files. Just one final word on that EXR mode, because I know that that might be what appeals to a lot of people when they're looking to purchase this camera. I've got very limited experience with it. I've not really used it because I don't tend to like shooting with JPEG, and even though it's an extended dynamic range feature, I'm perfectly happy with what I can get from the actual RAW files anyway. The only thing that I would say, again, this camera's not amazing in low light. It still gets a very decent image in the right conditions. But obviously it's not going to be anywhere comparable to like modern day Sonys and things like that for shooting at dark. So that would be one consideration that I would make. If you're buying this just based on that EXR mode, I'd probably do a little bit more research and make sure that it's for you. But from what I've seen out of the RAW files, I still think you'll get a very good image out of it anyway. And one other thing to mention when you're looking at sensors and things on older cameras is obviously with AI in Lightroom and other photo editing applications, there's a lot that you can do to upscale images these days. There's a lot that you can do with noise reduction. So with a little bit of working, you'll still get a very good image out of this, even in darker conditions. But it's always worth considering. You want to capture the best possible image in camera, not rely too heavy on what you're going to do to it in post. So just a couple of other features of the camera. Obviously it does have an optical viewfinder. Now, I tend to find that I do use it for just basic framing, so I will shoot like that because I quite like the action of raising the camera to my eye rather than looking at an LCD screen on the back. However, I do preface that it is only like a rough guide. I haven't had too many issues in terms of framing where I've missed a shot or ruined something because I've used the viewfinder, so it is pretty accurate. And obviously as you zoom, it will change to show you the actual field of view that you're getting with it. But if you are considering buying a compact camera like this, you may well be used to using the LCD screen to frame up with. The LCD screen itself is fine. I have no particular issues with it. There's obviously much better LCD screens like on modern cameras, and I think in bright sunny conditions it does tend to suffer a little bit, but other than that it's perfectly fine. Although a small camera like this, having an actual optical viewfinder is quite rare, and it's still quite fun just to use the camera like that. For those of you that are interested in these kind of things, it does have some film simulation modes as well. I've never really gone into using that because, as I keep saying, I shoot raw, so I kind of give my images the kind of look that I want from them anyway. But these are early iterations of what we know as like Fuji's film simulations and stuff these days. I would say, you know, if you're looking for a camera to use film simulations and stuff, it's great to have those features there, and will certainly give your images a unique feel and a different feel. But I would obviously always try and recommend shooting in RAW where possible and taking full control over your images just to get the look and feel that you want from them. One of the other considerations for using a camera like this is the autofocus speed, and generally just the speed of using a camera like this. I shoot a lot of landscapes with this. I'm not generally shooting any kind of fast moving action or anything, and I've found that the autofocus is relatively snappy. It does everything that I need for taking general day-to-day kind of street kind of shots. If it's really important that you have super fast, super snappy autofocus, a compact camera from 2011 probably isn't going to be the camera for you. If you're picking a camera up like this to use it on a day-to-day basis, just grabbing a few street shots or general kind of landscapes or travel in particular, I think this is fine. It will definitely get you by, and I've had no real issues. I do have a few misses here and there, obviously with autofocus, but nothing that I wouldn't expect from a camera from 2011. One of the other considerations with older cameras like this is always battery life. I tend to find that I can go out and shoot for a couple of days with this and don't ever really feel the need to charge the battery. I would always say these older batteries are relatively cheap and accessible, so you can always go and pick up an extra couple of batteries just to throw in a bag, keep hold of whenever you're out and about. Although I do tend to find that the battery life is pretty decent on this camera anyway, and for most people where it's just a bit of an everyday carry, you might be grabbing the odd shot here and there, the battery life is going to be perfectly fine. It's only in more kind of demanding situations. If you're actually going to use this on a shoot where you're out for a few hours grabbing photos, I definitely recommend picking up an additional battery, but the battery life in general has been pretty good from what I've found. Now, one of the other features that the camera does have that might be of interest to some people is that you can actually capture video on this. It's 1080p at 30 frames a second. The video quality is not going to be great. I'm not even going to give an example of it because it's nothing I've ever used. It might have a bit of a vintagey feel to it, I guess. It might feel like using an older camera, and it might get you by in certain circumstances. But again, the truth is, if you're looking for a camera that captures video quality, a compact camera from 2011 probably isn't going to be the highest camera on your list to capture really good quality video. But it does have that feature there. Can't imagine many people are buying it for that reason though. So when I started the video, I compared this camera as a potential alternative to the X100V or X100VI. And do I honestly mean that? Well, it's with slight caveats. I think this camera is brilliant and you can get a very good image from it. But obviously with an X100V, X100VI, you're going to get much better autofocus, much better sensor quality. It'll be better in lower light. There'll be a lot of benefits to using a more modern camera. But for the £1,500, £1,600, £700 that you're going to have to pay for one of those cameras, you can pick one of these up for around about £200, or around about $300, $400. I paid £150 for this camera around about 12 months ago, and I've been perfectly happy with it. So much so that I don't tend to pick my X100V up all that much. I'd much rather take a smaller camera just for day-to-day shooting. And this will sound a little bit crazy, and I know what some people will say about this, but I also don't tend to pick up my GFX 50S2. I'd rather pick this up when I'm just going out on the streets just for a walk around to take some images. And that's a medium format camera that costs many times more than this camera. I'll use this obviously for specific shoots and when I need that additional quality. So why would I choose this as a budget alternative to any of those cameras that I've just mentioned? It's because of that image quality. It's because it's so compact. It's so easy just to carry around with you and know that you have a camera with you all of the time, something that's readily accessible. So in terms of other alternatives, cameras from a similar kind of age, I also recently picked up the Canon G10, which is a great camera. I'd read a lot online. I was more interested in this camera because of the CMOS sensor. And from my initial tests with this, I'm 50-50 on whether I actually like it or not. It's definitely a good camera, definitely some benefits to it. But there's also a lot of things that I'm not 100% sold on. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to make a video about the G10. But in terms of size, handling and stuff, these are very, very similar cameras. I still tend to pick up the Fuji X10 more often, and this has, apart from one of my previous videos that you'll see, which is the Leica M8, this is pretty much my daily camera that I pick up and carry around purely based on that form factor. So should you actually buy a Fuji X10 in 2024, and who do I think it's for? I think if you've got the budget for it and you can afford to spend a few £100s on a camera and use it as a daily carry without worrying too much of whether it's going to break or if you're going to drop it or lose it or anything like that, then it's almost a no-brainer. The image quality is excellent on it for a camera of this age. It feels great in the hand, it's really easy to use, and it will make sure that you get those images when you're least expecting it, because you're able to carry a camera with you all of the time. I think if image quality is the highest priority to you and you need a much higher sensor, much better low light rendering as well, then this might not be the camera for you. In terms of a daily camera though, this is excellent, and even compared to a lot of modern day cameras, things like the Sony RX range, small compact cameras that are, you know, really high quality. I just think the character, the looks, the build quality and the feel of this camera make this so much more of an appealing camera to me personally than any of those cameras, and that's why I love carrying this on a daily basis. So obviously I've been very enthusiastic about this camera, but are there any cons? Are there any downsides to this camera? And I think the biggest one for most people will be that sensor resolution. So it's 12 megapixels, not amazing in low light, although I keep saying you can get a decent image in low light. Does 12 megapixels cut it in this day and age? And I think just about yes it does. It's perfectly fine for social media and websites and images for that kind of thing. I think with some of the AI features that you get in Lightroom, so the noise reduction, the being able to upscale an image, I think cameras like this will be given a new lease of life. They will be usable for a lot more situations. I think if you're doing professional shoots or stuff that's really, you know, image quality specific, there's going to be much better cameras than this. But I would say that as a day-to-day carry, like something that you can have with you all the time, I don't think you'll be too disappointed with the images that you get out of a camera like this. So that sensor, although it might be seen as a downside, I actually think, you know, it's still something that you can manage as long as you have decent expectations about that. In terms of other downsides, I genuinely haven't really come across anything. The viewfinder is, you know, a rough guide as much as anything. Other than that, I genuinely don't have any downsides. I kind of, if it was slightly better in low light conditions and maybe, you know, 20 megapixels, 24 megapixels, I'd much rather have this than the X100V or a lot of cameras of that kind of ilk. So in terms of final thoughts, I think that this is a brilliant budget alternative to some of the modern cameras that we've mentioned. I think it's an excellent camera for people just to carry on a day-to-day basis. It will render a really nice image, certainly in sunny conditions and bright conditions, and as a travel camera, I think it's an excellent choice. I do think that you're going to have the common issue of trying to find older cameras. Prices tend to go up as more of them break. They're harder to get hold of, and in terms of repairs and things, it is pretty much, if it breaks, you probably won't get it repaired, not at this kind of price anyway. So I do think it's one of those that you go into it just understanding that there are some caveats, but I think it's an excellent little camera, definitely one of my favorite cameras that I've ever used. Can't imagine I'll be selling it anytime soon, and just love this little camera. It's a brilliant little piece of kit just to carry on a daily basis. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you found it useful. Let me know if you are considering buying one of these cameras, or if you have a specific opinion on this camera. Let me know in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, do consider giving it a like and a subscribe. I always appreciate that. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I've finally done it. I finally kind of launched the preset pack. I never wanted to do it, but I got so many people asking questions about how I edit the images and things. I just thought it was easier. And in truth, it's a little bit of additional money, hopefully to buy more cameras so that I can make these kind of videos and you guys can find it useful. So I'll leave the link to the presets in the description below. But thank you for watching another video. Hope to see you in another one soon. Take care.